take your seats.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Germantown Academy 2016 Presidential Election Assembly. I'm Julia Buchholz.
And I'm Pat McGettigan.
And we will be your MCs for today's debate. First, get your phones and laptops ready for the interactive polling that will follow each set of presentations. Remember where you found Ms. Frazier's SurveyMonkey email last week, whether it's in the inbox, junk folder, or clutter.
Open that email, but don't start the survey just yet. Please wait for us to tell you when.
While you are doing that, let us tell you the plan for today's debate.
As you can see, there are 4 teams of students. They are here to represent the positions taken by the 4 major parties in this election: the Green, the Libertarian, the Republican, and the Democratic parties.
You will also notice we are not identifying which party each group represents because we want you to vote for the position represented, not the party, not the candidate, and not the person delivering the speech.
That means you'll have to listen carefully to each position and decide for yourself which presentation most closely reflects your point of view. When you hear a position that best reflects your view, take note of that option on your survey. But listen to the other presentations in case you decide to change your mind.
All 4 teams will have 1 minute to make their case, and then we will ask the audience to vote on which position is the course of action that best reflects their own views for the future of this country.
Keep in mind, you must submit a response in order to move on to the next question. We will tell you when to move on to the next question. And once you move on to the next question, you cannot go back. After all presentations have been made on all the topics, we will reveal the results and see where we stand as a community on these issues.
Excellent. Are you ready, Pat?
No. I have one question. Can the audience cheer or applaud?
The audience may cheer or applaud at only 2 points during the debate, at the beginning and at the very end. So we must ask the audience to hold their cheers and applause while the presentations are being made and wait until the very end.
Okay, so this is the beginning. Are you ready, presenters? Yeah! Are you ready, GA?
So let's begin with question number 1 on the topic of immigration. To what extent should the U.S. federal government restrict immigration to this country? Team A is first. You have 1 minute.
Of course, our party wants to protect and secure our great country from any possible threats. But we also want to fight against illegal entry into the U.S. by making legal entry more accessible and focus on recording the 11 million undocumented immigrants residing in the U.S. today. We will continue to uphold and support acts to help the undocumented but law-abiding members of our society avoid deportation and help them earn citizenship. We do not want to unnecessarily tear apart families who would be happy to abide by American laws and pay taxes. That would be inhumane and a waste of resources. We want to fix the visa backlog that keeps them from legal residency and to end raids and roundups of undocumented immigrants. We believe all people are created equal, and we believe in the power of opportunity to allow documented immigrants to fulfill that founding principle of our nation.
Our party believes that immigrants have been the backbone to the American economy. We want to provide a welcoming and legal path to citizenship for all immigrants. Getting a work visa should be easily obtainable for Mexicans and Canadians. Now, this doesn't mean allowing criminals into our land. We will input a thorough background check to make sure that the people we let in will benefit America as a whole. Undocumented immigrants who are already in the U.S. will be granted legal status that will ease the process to become a U.S. citizen. Blaming immigrants for social and economic issues only worsens the problem. Our border relations should be an essential concern for government, and we should work to better the social, economic, and environmental conditions for everyone.
We believe that immigrants are humans and should be treated as such, as all Americans are descendants of immigrants. Our economy needs workers who can fill low-skill and low-wage jobs. These positions are often occupied by immigrants, motivated by the American dream and the promise of a better life on American soil. Our system, however, blocks these hardworking contributors from legally entering the country and prevents them from not only filling the gap in the workforce, but from starting a better life for their families. We do not want to punish these ordinary people for pursuing the American dream and believe they should be treated with respect, as they are often integrated into everyday life. Workers should be permitted to remain in the country on a work visa in order to become tax-paying citizens so that they can contribute to our country or return home with greater financial security if they so choose. Safe borders can still allow workers of all skill levels to enter easily. Immigrants entering illegal look to escape poverty of their homes, not to attack our country.
Throughout our nation's history, immigrants have served as the engine of prosperity and growth for the nation, while laying the foundation for the ideas that now define our American sense of self. There can be no argument for a strong America without immigration. Our current legal immigration system is imperfect, however, as it unwittingly mirrors the admissions process of many selective universities. Not enough slots for many qualified candidates. Therefore, not all immigrants have to be doctors or elite athletes, but we need to find a way to welcome as many good people into our nation as possible while continuing to vet all immigrants and maintaining a secure border. However, the real issue we need to confront is illegal immigration. Going forward, this problem can be addressed by expediting the process for legal immigration and expanding the pool of eligible candidates, while eliminating sanctuary cities and strengthening our borders by enhancing our border patrol, including fair deportation of convicted criminals. By strengthening our border and reducing the amount of illegal immigrants, we can focus on choosing and celebrating our next generation of Americans.
Now is the time for you, the audience, to vote on the issue of immigration. You have 15 seconds to select your answer.
That's time. Click next to go to question 2 on the topic of the economy. To what extent should the U.S. federal government work to reduce economic inequality in this country? Team B is first. You have 1 minute.
A few years ago, the BP oil spill contaminated an enormous part of the Gulf of Mexico with catastrophic effects. The U.S. government had to come intervene to contain the oil, spending billions of dollars of taxpayer money in the process. BP was hit with some big fines, but the people behind BP, the shareholders of the company, didn't have to pay a dime. In the United States, shareholders of companies aren't liable for their company's actions, allowing big businesses to break the rules without fear. Instead, the employees of these companies take the hits. At Wells Fargo this year, over 5,000 employees were fired, while an executive in charge got a cool $120 million for the same actions. In the US, we even have a minimum wage so low that hardworking people can live underneath the poverty line simply because their employers aren't obligated to pay them anymore. We need to change this. We end corporate limited liability and tax the wealthy shareholders more, and raise the minimum wage for an acceptable standard of living for all.
We favor creating a free market system that would allow individual freedom and judgment. Each person or group that offers goods or services to others will agree on a price without government regulation, allowing for easy and profitable trade. All wages, prices, and profits will be controlled by this free market. The government has no place in attempting to control trades or redistribute wealth, except when fraud or violation of rights is involved. Taxes and regulations would be slashed, and a flat rate consumption tax would be implemented. The American social welfare state has also been a universal failure. We must end this system because it unfairly uses taxpayer dollars to pay for services to the poor, then traps the poor in a system that destroys opportunity and hope for themselves. Instead of this, barriers to employment should be broken so that companies can afford to hire more employees. By removing government involvement in economics, a society based on responsibility and hard work can be built.
We believe in a small government that does not hinder economic growth. Our hard-earned money belongs to individuals, not large government that is bureaucratic, slow, and wasteful. We strongly support free market capitalism, competition, and self-reliance. We oppose redistribution of wealth and unnecessary programs that waste taxpayer money. Our current tax rates destroy jobs. They destroy the incentive to work hard and start new businesses, and they are destroying the American worker. Instead, we should lower tax rates, which will create more jobs and opportunity for all Americans and reward hard work. Raising the minimum wage forces small businesses to make other budget adjustments, such as raising prices and laying off workers, reducing the number of these jobs available. Large businesses will seek to take their factories overseas, right at the time when we are trying to get American companies to bring jobs back to this country. Finally, we will work for a balanced budget. The national debt has nearly doubled over the last 8 years. We cannot allow this deficit to grow because of ineffective and costly programs. Prosperity is the product of self-discipline, enterprise, and saving and investment by private individuals.
We believe that for America to be the greatest country on earth, it is imperative that all of its citizens have the opportunity to be great. Therefore, we believe it is in the best interest of the nation to implement higher taxes on the nation's wealthiest 1%. The top 1% owns 90% of the wealth, and by raising their taxes, we can improve our education programs, healthcare, and transportation systems. Also, by increasing the income tax for those at the top, we can ensure Social Security's guaranteed benefits for the foreseeable future. We believe the minimum wage needs to be raised from its current $7.25 per hour to $15 per hour, because even in poorer states, the cost of supporting yourself and a child exceeds $20 per hour. To prevent companies from moving their operations overseas, we would deny tax breaks from companies to do that, ultimately making it more lucrative to remain in the U.S. This would encourage large companies to employ Americans and keep their jobs at home.
Now is the time for you to vote on the issue of economy. You have 15 seconds to select your answer.
That's time. Click next to go to question 3 on the topic of guns. How should the U.S. federal government respond to gun violence in this country? Team C is first. You have 1 minute.
We should base our nation's laws and policies off of the freedoms protected in the American Constitution. We believe in and wish to abide by the Second Amendment of the American Constitution, the right to bear arms, as it is one of our most fundamental rights. Gun control violates American citizens' rights, not only due to the Second Amendment, but also the 14th Amendment. Citizens are innocent until proven guilty, as it would persecute citizens for simply owning guns, without doing harm to anyone, as only 0.004% of American gun owners have committed firearm-related crimes. The government has no right to ban citizens from both owning or carrying guns. In fact, it should be encouraged. We believe the best way to stop a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun. Not with unnecessary screenings, background checks, and complicated legislation that is only doomed to fail, cost taxpayers more money, and make it more difficult for law-abiding citizens to practice their rights. If an American believes that the best way to protect his or her families with guns, they should simply be allowed to do so.
The right to bear arms is our constitutional right as citizens of the United States of America. We value the right to defend our families against domestic threats. We also maintain our stance on the right to obtain and store ammunition without registration. Now, we honor the fine American tradition of hunting and are strongly against government restriction on any type of firearm. The only regulation we support is enacting safe gun use programs into law to better protect our citizens against the rise of gang-related crime and terrorism. In the case of crime, criminals will be held accountable for their actions and will face state and federal gun laws at that point in time. You see, the best way, the very best way to protect our country against crime is not to restrict the rights of law-abiding gun owners, but rather to protect those rights even more. That is the best way to support our law enforcement, to defend our country, and to improve this great country that we call home.
From 1968 to 2011, 1.4 million civilian Americans have suffered firearm-related deaths. That's more than the total number of combat-related deaths from the War of Independence to the Iraq War. This data documents an enormous public health problem that is compromising the quality of life of many, if not most, Americans. Therefore, there needs to be strides taken to regulate guns in America. The abundance of guns is not only a problem in violent crimes, but in accidental deaths as well. Just this year, 59 children under the age of 3 have accessed a gun and shot themselves or someone else. As a nation and a federal legislature, we must come together and find a common ground so that we can protect the liberty and well-being of all citizens. We think that the regulation of guns involves reinstating the assault weapons ban, taking weapons of war off our streets. We think that we need more thorough background checks with longer wait times that can't be bypassed by buying a gun online or at a gun show. And finally, we believe that if the Terrorist Security Administration says you're too dangerous to get on a plane, you're too dangerous to buy a gun.
In this country, more than 30,000 Americans are killed with guns every year, and more than 30 people are shot and killed every day. There are 357 million firearms in the hands of American civilians, meaning there are more guns in this country than people. 40% of those people who own guns did not undergo a background check. The 1993 Brady Bill requires a background check when buying a firearm from a federally licensed vendor. However, there's a loophole. At gun shows, unlicensed vendors are allowed to sell guns without requiring background checks or waiting periods. We wish to close this gun show loophole to make sure that guns in this country are owned lawfully after proper background checks and waiting periods. Of the 357 million firearms, lawful gun owners own 5 to 10 million assault rifles. We see no need for the ownership or use of assault-style weapons in this country and wish to renew the ban on assault weapons.
Now is the time for you to vote on the issue of guns. You have 15 seconds to select your answer.
That's time. Click next to go to question 4 on the topic of healthcare. What action should the U.S. federal government take in regard to the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare? Team D is first. You have 1 minute.
Our main goal is to provide everyone with access to quality, affordable health care. The Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, drives up prices of premiums and deductibles for individuals, families, and businesses while also fueling waste, fraud, and abuse. Obamacare has created an entanglement of regulations, taxes, and mandates that can only be fixed if it is fully repealed. States will provide more options at lower costs, allowing you to pick the plan that fits your needs, not Washington's needs. By giving states the authority to regulate local insurance markets, you will never have to worry about being denied or losing coverage no matter your age, income, or medical condition. We will clear away the federal government's involvement that has stagnated the development of life-saving devices and therapies. Seniors and the poor have not been forgotten. We will protect Medicare and Medicaid through block grants for states and ensure it remains available for all future generations to come. Free market healthcare promotes competition that results in lower prices, more choices for all needs, and quick access.
Every American should have access to affordable, high-quality health care. The question becomes, by what means should they get their health care? Citizens should not be at the mercy of the private sector, who has taken advantage of the lowest class, children, and the elderly. This is not acceptable. It is the duty of the federal government to regulate such a system in order to ensure every citizen has proper access. The Affordable Care Act put in place comprehensive health insurance reforms in order to give power back to the consumers. Since its passage into law in 2010, an estimated 20 million additional American citizens have gained health insurance that were not able to without it. Those provisions include Medicaid expansion, health insurance marketplace coverage, and changes in private insurance that allow young adults to stay on their parents' health insurance plans, and require plans to cover people with existing health conditions. We want to decrease healthcare costs for all Americans by lowering out-of-pocket expenses, lowering prescription drug costs, providing tax credits to cover health costs, and capping premiums. Increasing access to more Americans will actually provide the means to both lower these costs and pay for them as well.
Our party's perspective on healthcare is quite simple. Our principal goal is adding universal single-payer healthcare for every single U.S. citizen. This means that all residents of the U.S. will be covered for all medically necessary services. To us, healthcare is a fundamental human right, not a privilege. It's something that every single American deserves and should get through our policy. Every year, between 20,000 and 45,000 Americans die from circumstances related to a lack of health insurance. This is a monstrosity and something that we, as the greatest nation in the world, have a responsibility to fix. We will fund this by increasing taxes on the wealthiest Americans. Obamacare is a good first step, but we need universal single-payer health care for every single person in this country.
Our team seeks to provide low-cost health care to everyone who desires it in America. We favor creating a system that allows individuals to make their own decisions and prices for services and goods to be set by an agreement between patients and providers without intervention by any state authority. By allowing individuals to make choices, the dignity of each person is emphasized, regardless of gender or religion. This free market system would allow each person to be more prosperous by repealing government policies that decrease the availability of services and increase costs. Laws that mandate coverage of particular diseases and disabilities would also restrict consumer choice and increase expenses. Virtually all people would be able to afford medicine once taxes are cut and barriers are removed. Once government intervention in healthcare is abolished, the country will prosper, and anyone who wishes to access healthcare will be able to quickly, cheaply, and easily.
Now is time for you to vote on the issue of healthcare. You have 15 seconds to select an answer.
That's time. Click next to go to question number 5 on the topic of the environment. To what extent should the U.S. federal government increase environmental regulations to address climate change? Team A is first. You have 1 minute.
Our position on the environment revolves around sustainability, combating climate change, and protecting our ecosystems. We support some increase in oversight and regulation for fuel drilling practices like fracking, mining, and oil drilling to avoid increasing pollution, while also shifting towards new renewable sources of energy that will provide new, safe, good-paying jobs. We oppose plans like the Keystone XL pipeline, which propose digging up and potentially polluting the land of the American Midwest. We should look towards a clean energy future as a nation that the world looks to as an example. In doing so, we must also support the miners, the frackers, and the oil drillers' transition into a new clean energy world. Most importantly, we firmly believe that something must be done about the real and urgent threat of climate change. Rising waters pose an immediate threat to cities like New York, Los Angeles, New Orleans, and Miami. But if no action is taken in the next few years, Philadelphia won't be far behind.
The fullest extent. Climate change is the single greatest danger to the future of human life on Earth, and the U.S. must work with international organizations to address climate change on a truly global scale. We will expand maximum effort to preserve a planet friendly to life by curtailing greenhouse gas emissions and actively removing those gases from the atmosphere. Our vision includes creating millions of new jobs by transitioning to 100% clean renewable energy by 2030 and investing in public transportation, sustainable agriculture, and conservation. We also wish to declare a climate state of emergency so we can respond in real time to the issues facing this country, like extreme wildfires and flooding. In addition, we will adopt a national zero waste policy because the less we consume and throw away, the less we need to reduce and replace. For us to continue enjoying all that the earth has to offer, we need to change our ways or nothing will be left.
We believe that the government should not play a primary role in solving climate change. The government is the single greatest polluter of the land, and its attempts at protection throughout history have been feeble. In 1988, the government refused to honor the EPA's request to clean up 17 of its military bases, leaving toxic chemicals in the environment that would take $100 billion and 50 years to clean up. The government creates more waste than the top 5 largest U.S. chemical companies combined, but still claims sovereign immunity. This legal principle absolves government of its responsibilities, thus making it impossible for the government to commit a legal wrong. Our candidate would immediately revoke this immunity and hold the government to the highest environmental standard possible. We believe that private ownership of land is the best way to protect the environment. The government is not an expert on the environment, therefore it is its responsibility to allow private companies who specialize in environmental protection or clean energy to conduct their business as they see fit. We do not believe in subsidizing energy companies. Instead, the market should determine if and when cleaner energy should replace fossil fuels.
We are the party of America's growers, producers, farmers, and all those who give us minerals, energy, and food that is vital to our economy. The current regulations on agriculture have caused food prices to rise, which makes things harder for people trying to make ends meet. States are best equipped to deal with farm oversight policies, not Washington. Cleaner and more efficient energy is extremely important, which is why we want to provide incentives to a private sector for the development of newer energy technologies. On the topic of climate change, we oppose both the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement. No such agreement can be binding upon the United States until it is submitted to and ratified by the Senate. We also call for an immediate halt to funding of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, in accordance with the 1994 Foreign Relations Authorization Act. This act prohibits Washington from giving any money to an affiliated United Nations organization which grants Palestinian membership as a state. It would be illegal for the president to follow through on his or her actions to provide millions in funds to its Green Climate Fund.
Now is the time for you to vote on the issue of the environment. You have 15 seconds to submit your answer.
That's time. Click next to our final question, number 6, on the topic of foreign policy. To what extent should the U.S. federal government involve itself in the affairs of other nations? Team B is first. You have 1 minute.
Wars throughout American history have been destructive and immoral, and we must not waste any more ideals, money, or citizens' lives on fighting such wars. We must recognize the threat posed by other governments and defend ourselves when necessary. But instead of promoting violence, all of our foreign affairs should be focused towards peace. In 2013, we spent over $3 billion in Israel and Palestine, supporting policies abusing human rights and creating destructive weapons. We should step back and promote peace in this region and areas like the Middle East. We've spent over $1 trillion and over 4,000 American lives in Iraq, yet we are not any safer than before our 2003 invasion. Now, terrorist groups are bent on our destruction. We should have relied on an international coalition that maintained peace as its first priority, and we should return to that principled position. The U.S. should be a beacon, demonstrating that residents in these areas, not foreign intervention, should be responsible for enhancing their country's well-being and social equality.
The United States should take a neutral stance in foreign conflicts to save American lives and money. We should engage in free trade with our allies, but responsibly as to not harm our economy. We should limit our military to defense only. We should stop our current policy of providing free military aid to foreign nations, and we should close all foreign bases and bring our troops home. For example, the United States currently spends $8 billion annually to pay for 80,000 American troops stationed in Japan and South Korea. We need to end our military and financial intervention, but make it easier for private individuals and groups to provide such aid for hire or charity. We should not work against attempts of civilians in foreign nations to rise up against oppressive and tyrannical regimes, and we should condemn all uses of military force against innocent civilians, whether perpetrated by foreign terrorist organizations or governments. We lost thousands of American troops and spent trillions of dollars in Iraq. By responsibly using our military for the defense only, we would save thousands of lives and return billions of dollars to the taxpayers, enriching our economy.
We believe in taking strong, decisive steps in order to ensure the safety of our country and the safety of Americans everywhere. First, we reject the nuclear deal made with Iran and don't consider it effective in eliminating the threat posed by Iran. Second, we must eliminate the threat of radical Islamic terrorism that has been allowed to grow uncontrollably into ISIS. Weak measures merely place a bandage on the wound and do not cure it. We will need to coordinate airstrikes with Russia in order to stop the Islamic State before it becomes too late. Above all, we must work with Israel, our most important ally in the Middle East, to combat our enemies together, even if it means ground troops. We must demonstrate military strength and the willingness to use it in order to protect the interests of our country and remain and reclaim our position as the most powerful nation in the world. Only then will other nations pay their fair shares of our military leadership, because that is the only way to ensure genuine peace and security in the world.
The United States' role is not roaming the world looking for dictators to topple, but instead to confront evil when it arises. Today, the Islamic State is that evil in the world. We as a nation must be committed to strengthening our multilateral capabilities with nations around the world in order to secure a safer future. The United States possesses the strongest military in the world, period. That said, without engagement with our steadfast NATO allies and regional powers, progress on international trade, nuclear non-proliferation, and the defeat of ISIS will only be but a dream. To prevent another costly war in the Middle East, we must not send ground combat troops. Instead, our assistance to the Iraqi government should include intelligence sharing, the deployment of support officers, and covert operations targeting the leadership of ISIS. The imposition of a no-fly zone will also prevent further loss of innocent lives. When a crisis arises in the world, nations do not turn to Moscow or Beijing, but instead to Washington, for our leadership has always been committed to confronting evil and securing stability in the world.
Now it's time to vote on the issue of foreign policy. You have 15 seconds to submit your answer.
That's time. While we were waiting for SurveyMonkey to tabulate the results, we would like to thank all of the students who participated in today's assembly. They did an amazing job.
We would also like to thank the faculty who organized this whole wonderful thing, and so you can clap for them too.
And we did not forget you, the audience. Thank you for your attention today. We hope you found this debate worthwhile in helping us all to better understand some of the important political questions facing our nation in this presidential election. We hope this will help you make informed, thoughtful decisions when we vote in our own GA mock presidential election on Tuesday, November 8th.
Julia, when do we find out which political party goes with which team?
Right now. Here's the big reveal. Team A, the Democratic Party. Team B, the Green Party. Team C, the Libertarian Party. And Team D, the Republican Party.
Remember that question from the first poll about political party affiliation? We thought you might find it interesting to see the results from that poll before we see the results from today's questions. How closely will the results match this breakdown? Do your personal answers today align with your party affiliation?
Well, let's see. For question number 1, on immigration, the majority sided with the answer that most closely aligns with the Republican Party.
Yeah, sure. For question number 2 on the economy, it looks like we have more Republicans here. So, yeah, Republicans. Yeah.
For question number 3 on guns, the majority sided with the answer that most closely aligns with the Democratic Party.
For question number 4 on healthcare, the majority of you sided with, once again, the Republican Party.
For question number 5 on the environment, the majority seems to be split between the Democratic and the Green Party.
And for question 6 on foreign policy, most of you sided with the Democratic Party.
Wow, Pat, I can't believe it.
That's crazy. I'm stunned.
Either way, this is another great example of our community working together to talk about important issues. Our differences in opinion do not weaken us, they make us stronger, as long as we remain committed to working together in the end.
You said it, Julia, and that concludes the 2016 Presidential Election Assembly. Seniors and faculty, it's time to break.